Welcome back to another UNC basketball recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of basketball recruiting, Mr. David Sisk. And David, we're going to have sort of a short podcast here because we're going to focus on a young man who used to be committed to Florida State, decommitted about a week ago. And we learned earlier this week that UNC has reached out. Bryce McGowens, he's a 5-star small forward, the number 23 overall prospect in the class of 2021. No longer committed to Leonard Hamilton's program, but he has been in contact with UNC and quite a few other schools. So what's the latest on Bryce McGowens?
Just fielding calls right now. A ton of programs have reached out, like you said. And he's already in the process of doing Zoom calls. I think Nebraska is going to be an early favorite. His brother, Trey, is a member of that program now, transferred from Pitt, as we talked about before we went on the air. They Zoom called yesterday, and I heard they're in the process of setting up Zoom calls now. So how rapidly it's going to move, I don't know. I don't know if he wants to try to get this over early signing period. And early signing period started right at 4 weeks from today. So don't know how quickly he wants to move this along, but I mean, it looks like they're in the process more now. Instead of fielding calls, it looks to me like they've got past that stage, and now they're trying to find out about some places.
He committed to FSU in early February. So usually when guys decommit, it's a month or two or whatever. This is quite a while. Any idea? Are you hearing anything about why he decided to part ways with the Seminoles?
I don't. I know that it's been a stellar recruiting class. In fact, Rivals had it ranked number 1 in the nation before he decommitted. Still really good. And they brought some guys in since then, Matthew Cleveland. But I think Matthew Cleveland may be more of a shooting guard, where Bryce may be more of a small forward. But maybe it's just the addition of players they brought on top of him. Maybe he went there thinking, hey, I'm going to be the man. And if he did do that, he's going to be a big part, but it's not going to be a one-man show with what Leonard Hamilton's brought in. One thing, too, you talked about February of your junior year is early to do it.
Yeah.
And I noticed a lot of times when guys commit that early, sometimes it's hard for them to keep that commitment because I'm sure programs are still in contact. Maybe there's something they don't like. Maybe more than anything, they do it so early. And maybe it's like getting married when you're 18 years old and on down the line at the wrong time, you say, I wonder what it's like to be single. So maybe that's what's kind of going through his mind.
The girl I was dating when I was 18 doesn't talk to me anymore. Hadn't talked to me for a long time. So before we get into the UNC part here, tell us a little bit about what kind of player Bryce is.
Really, one thing I've noticed just by looking at him, really, really lengthy on a wing. I mean, his arms go forever. He has a long frame, right in the 6'6" range. So he has that type of just basketball body where I think on the defensive end, he can harass. On the offensive end, he's just got that length where he can get in the lane, finish, and a really big-time athlete. He's ranked number 23 by Rivals. He's a 5-star, and, he's deserving of that ranking.
I have seen Trey play in person several times. He played a huge role in Pitt's win in Chapel Hill last year, and saw him 10 days later up to Pittsburgh. Really, he's a really bouncy player. He's got some skills, real bouncy, aggressive, likes getting in the lane, and he's one of those guys that gets off his feet quickly. Is that sort of comparable to what Bryce does?
Yeah, I mean, not totally the same, but let's say it this way. They're an athletic family. If you're born into that family, you pitch a genetic lottery.
Yeah, well, Trey's a very impressive athlete who's obviously now at Nebraska. Okay, so you were digging for a few days. You were hearing some stuff about Carolina being in contact, and you were able to get it confirmed a few days ago. So what have you learned about UNC's contact with Bryce McGowens?
Well, it's minimal right now. I had heard, when did this become public? I think Monday. I had heard Sunday night from his AAU coach that they had reached out, Carolina had reached out, and I went to a source about it who can find out things about the recruitment. He wasn't sure about it, and then it was confirmed Monday. So I don't know much more than that right now. I know it, like I said, I think for everybody, it's in the initial contact stages. I can't look at any team. You might say Nebraska simply because his brother's there, and I think he already has familiarity with the program. But I think with everybody else right now, it's just kind of in the initial stage where you're making contact and you're trying to get through and just introduce yourself. So I would say introductory. The question is going to be how fast, like I said, how fast does this recruitment move? How quick does it go from an introductory stage to, hey, do you want to go out on a date, until, hey, they're getting serious. I know it seems like I'm mentioning relationships a lot, but that's the best way I know to compare it.
Well, that's
down to where everybody can understand what's going on.
Yeah, well, it's a huge part of what this is. It's about so much about that. Okay, let's imagine for a moment that we're going to take a look at Bryce McGowens and put a Carolina uniform on him, insert him into a Roy Williams system. How does he fit in?
I'm going to be honest, I've not seen enough of him yet, but I think it fits well. I think anytime you've got the length and athleticism that he does, you're going to fit, especially with the way Roy Williams likes to get up and down the court. On the offensive end, I would see him being much better in somewhere like that than maybe a Virginia, where it's just kind of really physical and, kind of bogged down in an offensive system and half court. Now, defensively, I think he could fit in anywhere just by looking at his frame. I think he's a type that you really like on that end, no matter who you are. But just as far as Roy's knack for playing transition in Carolina secondary, I think he looks to me like a good fit.
We're going to hit on two other kids real quickly before we close out this podcast. Skyy Clark announces in a week. We haven't talked about him for a while. I don't know how to classify his recruitment and the way the information has swirled around his recruitment. But a week ahead of Skyy Clark's commitment, what's your pulse right now?
I'm going to be honest with you. People send me stuff and I hear stuff and I just stay away from it. I get asked about it on boards. I don't comment. Man, I'm going to tell you, I don't know that when he makes his commitment, it's done. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't mean this to sound negative. I really like him. I like the family, but even they would have to admit that over the years, he committed to Paul, I think, when he was in either eighth grade or a freshman, and then decommitted. So he's already committed to a college. He's been to several AAU programs. He's been to several high schools. We get word that, that he may be transferring high schools in Nashville before they play the first high school game. He just moved into Brentwood Academy. There's a lot of word here that he's going to Innsworth. So I don't know. I mean, you hear a lot of talk at Kentucky. I heard a national analyst say they think it's North Carolina. I've got a friend, Travis Graff, who works for Rivals. Travis is really, really good. He says you wouldn't believe how confident the University of Memphis staff is right now. And there's a Mike Miller play in this one. Mike Miller has gotten really close to the family. They go to do events in Memphis, camps with Mike Miller's cousin, and they are tight. And I'm curious if I've thought all along, all this back and forth from North Carolina, Kentucky, are they throwing people off their scent? And he ends up at Memphis. We'll see. Like I said, we'll see on the 22nd when he makes his decision. But I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't hold my breath then.
Yeah, we see a lot more throwing off the scent in basketball recruiting than we do in football. We don't see much of it in football at all.
Bryce
There are a lot more decommitments in football than in basketball.
I know North Carolina fans are not interested in this one, but there's another one, Bryce Hopkins, right now, who's Illinois, Providence, Indiana, Kentucky, and I think it was funny watching reports yesterday that he's set his commitment date for October the 20th, and then no, he hasn't. It was all just back and forth on Twitter, and I'm like, man, just don't put yourself out there if you're in recruiting media. He says, hey, I can't do it because it may not be the 20th because I kind of make a recruiting video. You make a recruiting video in 3 hours. So
and there's some coaches that will, and there's some coaches that have been through that a few times and just choose to start backing off a little bit when the circus ensues, and we see that a lot in basketball recruiting. Trey Kaufman, we've talked about him a lot and written about him a lot. Kid forward from Indiana. Just kind of wanted to ask you, catch up. What's the latest on him? He was in Chapel Hill about 7 weeks ago with his mom. Checked out UVA as well. So what are you hearing recently about the latest with him?
Not a whole lot. His is really quiet. His is refreshing because it's quiet.
It's the opposite of what we were just talking about.
Yeah, there's no circus with his. Now, he's been really good in the past about answering phone calls and texts and things like that. He's always gotten back with me. Now, it may be a couple of days later. I have reached out in the past, I don't know, since Friday, probably twice, 2 phone calls and 2 texts. And I haven't heard anything from him. That tells me maybe it's getting closer. When you take guys who are really good about getting in touch and working with you, and they kind of go dark, then that tells you that maybe things are starting to happen. But I've fallen back and talked to some people in the state of Indiana, and they think it's Indiana, North Carolina, and Virginia, all pretty close. Nobody knows a date yet, but like I said, we're within 4 weeks of early signing period. I definitely feel like he's an early signing period guy, even though he's not set the time yet. He kind of already, what you could say, trim list. He, like you said, almost 2 months ago, made unofficial visits on his own dime, and I got a dog in the background. So, but I expect this one not to go on too long, but I think it's going to be between those 3. North Carolina's right there.
Everything I've read that he said in talking to you and others, if you were a UVA fan and you only read what he said about UVA, you'd feel real good. If you're a Carolina fan and you only read what he said about Carolina, you'd feel real good. Same with Indiana. And he said a lot of very positive things about all 3 schools. I would think that he's a young man that would be happy going to any of those 3 schools, but obviously he can't go to all 3. He's going to have to make a choice. And it has, like you said, it has been trending to me that he's going to be a November commitment, a November signee, which I guess is a month from now. So, and he would be a nice pickup for UNC to add to what. Yeah, and they need another big guy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They're really looking at a post, and I don't know, as we go on and talk about this year's team, it could go anywhere between no post players coming back to 3 coming back. I mean, it could be – we'll see just how well the freshmen do, what kind of improvements Baycott makes. But they need – Jabari Smith just committed to Auburn. That was really the only other big, but that is a need. And they've really just kind of thrown given the keys to Trey Kaufman and say, here, we're going to give you the car, man. Not literally, but figuratively. We don't want the NCAA down here. But they kind of said, hey,
blue chips.
That's one thing I would think if I'm Roy, I'd say, hey, even go back and look. Yeah, we recruited Jabari Smith, but we weren't in that nearly as seriously as we were with you. If you go back and look, all the available bigs in 2021, we chose you. So, that's something that they can really play. But I don't think I don't get any indication from him that he's playing one against the other. I think, if I ask him about North Carolina, he's going to tell me what he likes about North Carolina. If Brad Franklin at the Virginia side asks him about Virginia, he's going to tell Brad what he likes about Virginia. It's like I said, to me, it's a refreshing recruitment. He's good to work with, and I don't ever get the indications playing one against the other.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. If you're a fan of any of those schools, you're going to feel pretty good, and he's been pretty honest about it. So, David Sisk, fantastic stuff.
Really good young man. Good young man. Really good to talk to.
That's the full impression I'm getting, that whoever gets him, they're not going to have a circus to deal with at all. So anyway, David Sisk, awesome stuff. Thanks as always. Thank you for stopping by another UNC basketball recruiting podcast here on TarHillIllustrated.com and Tar Heel Illustrated on YouTube. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, share the video, and go check out our site, TarHillIllustrated.com. David's got a ton of stuff up all the time, and he's the best in the business. Thanks for stopping by.